Good morning. This is Pregnancy Week 10 update. Um,
Pregnancy loss.
Pregnancy loss update because it's not really a pregnancy anymore, but you're technically still
I'm in
pregnant.
this phase of being pregnant, but not pregnant,
pregnant.
which is not a fun place to be. But at the same time, I also just told you this morning that I think that I am thankful for the opportunity to process this loss and for us to kind of work through some things before actually going through the process of experiencing the loss physically. And that's coming from a place of when I had a miscarriage in 2019. We had an ultrasound and it was inconclusive, and so it was just kind of like a waiting game. And then it was like I started bleeding, and that was the process of like that was kind of the
I remember the night.
reality of
I remember the night you started bleeding. You said, "I have some pink-ish stuff on the toilet paper," and I said, "Well, maybe it's nothing." And we held each other tight that night. And the next morning is when it started. You were like, "Yeah, this is happening," and I wanted to say when this is coming from a place. It's coming from a place of experience.
Yes.
We experienced
Both sides.
the miscarriage of not sure if it's going to happen, and then started bleeding, and then the miscarriage this time of yes, this is pregnancy. You're going to miscarry. It's going to start. It's going to happen. And what Christy's talking about is us being able to go through the loss before the loss physically happened.
Mm-hmm.
And
as opposed to those compiling on top of each other.
Right. And we were talking this morning that if we hadn't had the ultrasound, we wouldn't know. And this is one of those things we discussed whether or not if we were going to get ultrasounds to know information. And I can say I'm happy we got the ultrasounds to have the information so that we could process before the two-punch combo of the bleeding started and having to process being physically uncomfortable and emotionally uncomfortable.
Now, granted, just like on the flip side of that, I also want to say that it hasn't been easy. Like, I've kind of been. I feel like the first 4 or 5 days after we found out, kind of like I was able to go about my life. And I guess for some reason, I just kind of anticipated that it would be like the physical aspect of it would be over by then. And then when it wasn't, I kind of like, I've kind of camped out in our bedroom, just kind of waiting and waiting and waiting. And so it's kind of like.
You did go to the kitchen to get a cookie.
Thanks, babe.
I invited her out last night to go get dinner because we brought dinner out, and I said, "Do you want to come?" She goes, "No."
Nope, I don't want to leave the house, let alone my bedroom. And so I'm just like, as I've learned that some people go weeks, months waiting, and obviously, like, this is not going to work very well if I'm just hanging out
in our room
waiting,
for 6 months.
literally waiting.
Well,
So, but I guess I'm thankful. Like I am thankful, and just to kind of share a possibly too much information update. Like I did have a little bit of well, hold on. I want to jump back. I want to go back to. So, I did. I kind of got to the point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. I need this to be over. And we had some. I had my blood work done a week and a half ago, and there were some tests that they weren't able to run because of
poor
issue
processing.
with the blood
serum getting separated.
Test, whatever. Anyway, so we had to do, my midwife came back to do some more blood work on Thursday, Wednesday,
Couple days
Thursday,
ago.
Thursday. And before she came, I told her, I'm like, I need to do something. I need this process to be over with. And so we talked about using some herbs, and I told Kevin at one point, I think it was like on Tuesday or Wednesday, like, I've got clary sage that I could just start using that and could see if it brings on the process, because it's one of the things that you can do. And I was like, but I'm not using it. So obviously I'm not that ready. And then I finally, I was like, all right, I'm going to just go take a couple sniffs of it. And I did a couple times. And then I ended up applying it topically, and nothing happened. And so our midwife came over and was like, I'm done. I'm so over this. I need it to be over. And she left some tinctures for me to use to help encourage the process along. And I was like, I'm going to wait until, I was thinking to myself, I was going to wait until the next day. And she's telling me about how, it can take days of taking these herbs every 2 hours, and it can take some time. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll take some tonight and then go from there. And I didn't take them that night, and I woke up the next morning and I told Kevin, I'm like,
you can't make me.
I don't feel right about taking them. I don't know why, but I don't feel right. And we talked about it a little bit, and I'm like, I feel like it's coming from a place of, it's driven by my own selfish desire of wanting this to be over, wanting to get through it, wanting to be on the other side. And I just wanted to force it. And there was something that just it didn't feel right. And I do believe that God takes us through things, and his timing is best. And I'm not going to say that herbs, using herbs to encourage a process, are wrong. This is not any sort of a judgment. It's not saying that I'm not going to end up using them, but at this point in time, I felt like the place that my heart was at was not right. I also told you, I go, oh boy, you're crunchy when herbs are too invasive. I couldn't get myself to a place where I felt right about doing it, and you kind of agreed with me.
Well, I said at any point in time, whenever something doesn't feel right, I think that's the Holy Spirit urging you to do one thing or another. We've got plenty of examples of where we've gone against what we felt was right and know how that ends up. And when you follow closely along to those heatings, then it's usually more peaceful and things feel better. So not taking the herbs was the choice that led us to having some peace, to allow Christy's body to do what we felt was going to be nature taking its course and allowing things to happen the way that it was supposed to. And the next morning, after she decided that...
No, it wasn't. It was yesterday yesterday afternoon.
Yesterday afternoon. Or no, it was that morning you said... No, it was that morning. No, it was the afternoon. I'm so confused. Whatever. That afternoon, she said to me... she was going to the bathroom, and she's like, I have something! She's like, look! And I look and I go... Okay. And
you were like, I don't see any pink.
I don't see any pink. And she's like,
And I'm like, wait,
It's-
here's some more.
and I looked at it and I go, I didn't see it. It was a mucusy something. I don't know. And then she goes, it was pink. She goes, it's in the toilet. And I'm like, it can stay in the toilet. If there was pink or not, I couldn't see it, whatever. But the whole point was is we felt confident that doing nothing was the right choice and allowing her body to do what it was supposed to. It's a choice that you have to make for yourself and what course of action you are or aren't going to take. I've heard of people going to the doctor immediately. There's the whole process of not doing anything, herbs, medical, and then surgery. There's so many different paths you can take.
There's also a lot of factors that you have to kind of take into account in making that decision, and that every situation is very personalized. And I'm not even saying that, I just have some very early signs that there is some motion that my body is going to take care of this the way that it is supposed to. Now, if let's just say that things go on and it doesn't, then when it gets to the point of, we're getting to a time frame where I have to consider the idea of going in for a DNC, that's the point where I go, okay, let's try the herbs for a couple days. If that doesn't work, let's try the medication for a couple days. And then if that still doesn't work and if we're experiencing problems, whatever, then you move on to the next step. And that's just the way that I feel comfortable doing things.
And
So.
let's talk marriage for a second. We try to live our life so closely together that we are equally yoked on everything. Because if there's an area of your life that you're not equally yoked on or 100% on the same page, then there's a disconnect in your relationship that can birth a very, very steep downward spiral of a degeneration.
Okay.
Of not just your marriage, but your family as well. And we lived a very downward spiraled disintegration of our family and relationship for years. And so walking over the last couple of years closely together, I would never push her to go get a DNC because we believe that that's the last step. Same thing with how we handle 85 to 95% of our health care. I would say
It's as non-invasive as possible.
Yeah, I had a tooth pulled last fall, 2 falls ago, and that was a big deal. I mean, we talked months and months and months about what we were going to do, what we weren't going to do, and we finally settled on pull the tooth. And I don't think I've had many side effects because of it. I don't know.
The only thing I would change about that is that I think, and I would look into it more, but I think that I would do it, have it done surgically, because that was a very invasive process that you went through to get it out.
He pulled on my tooth for over an hour. It was I don't know much about teeth pulling. That's the first time I've ever had one pulled. But regardless,
You have a dentist that is willing to support you in whatever you believe. When you have a dentist that would normally get paid multiple thousands of dollars for a root canal that would take probably half the time that it took him to pull your tooth that he got $70 for.
Yeah. Thanks, Dr. B.
But one of the other parts of that, and I don't remember if we talked about it last week or not, but the fact that if there is a disconnect, if we are not equally yoked on something, we do believe that it is a point in time that we, now that we're at this point in our relationship where we are close enough, I would not recommend doing this if you're in a struggling marriage, because it would probably turn to a lot of finger pointing. But if you have a really solid marriage and you notice that there's disconnect, I think that it's a great time to look and examine your own life and your together each other's lives, to see if there is any sin that is getting in the way that is causing that disconnect. So, one of the things that this led me to is a realization that I've had in the last few years. And it's kind of been something that it wasn't like this aha moment, but it's something more that I've like grown into this place of realizing that I have the right to make a decision and it doesn't have to be correct. Because I used to be in this place where it was like, I need to be right. And being right is more important than anything else. And I've grown into this place of I'm going to make a decision that is going to best serve me and that I'm going to be able to move forward in the best way possible from. And it doesn't matter if I'm right or wrong. And to give that, like to kind of give an example of that is the fact that when I found out that I was pregnant, I decided that everything was going to be okay. And that everything was going to, like, this baby was going to grow and I was going to give birth to a healthy baby and we were going to go live happily ever after. And in the past, I would try and protect myself from
getting excited
the
and then
unknown,
yeah.
thinking that, like, well, if I'm going to lose this baby, I want to prepare myself. And if I am going to go through a hard time, whatever, like if anything's going to go wrong, I would feel a lot better if I knew and I saw it coming and I was able to prepare myself. And the problem is that it doesn't do us any good. Like, I can tell you wholeheartedly that I am so happy that I made the decision to not go through this pregnancy in fear. Coming to the point of losing this baby, I feel so much better that I was able to enjoy the pregnancy that I had and that I was able to share it and not hide it, and that I was able to not be fearful through it. Mm-hmm. And I feel like doing any of that would not have put me in a better place in any shape, way, or form. But that's not what our mind tells us. Like, our mind tells us, you know, I need to prepare for this, and I need to protect myself from this. I need to not let myself get excited because, you know, we might lose this baby, and I need to be ready for it. But really, you're not doing yourself, like, honestly, you're causing more stress on your body. And you're making yourself go through pain that is totally unnecessary. And another example of this is after finding out that we lost the baby, just like I researched things obsessively. And so even coming from a place of having a miscarriage, I had a miscarriage at 12 weeks and I'm now at 10 weeks. But I also, like, there was a lot more growth in the 12-week miscarriage. And so I think that, and I don't know if it's just because of the 2 weeks or what, but I'm like, I don't know what's going to be different. And then we were talking about it the other day, and I'm like, I don't even remember a lot of when I had that miscarriage. And so that's my little reminder to self to record videos and to talk about it so that I can go back for reference. Because that stuff you just kind of like, you let go of and get rid of and you don't hold on to it. But when you want to kind of go back to it, it's gone.
Yeah. And
so anyway, just did some research and hearing stories about people who, you know, people who have miscarriages and there's complications and there's hemorrhaging and excessive bleeding for weeks and weeks and weeks and who end up in the hospital for XYZ reason. And I'm just like,
gosh.
So then it's like, okay, so, because I also told you a number of times, I'm like, I want it to be over, but I don't want to go through it. Mm-hmm. And That's kind of contradictory, telling my body like two different things. I want it to be over, but I don't want to go through it. And so am I like holding back the processes in my body because the mind is so powerful and can do crazy things like that. But so examining, is my decision to take herbs fear or selfish based? Is my decision not to take herbs fear or selfish based? Like,
Right.
just continuously getting to that, where is your heart at? But I think that before you're even examining your heart, you have to make sure that you are ruling out fear.
Yeah.
And so the best way that I know to rule out fear is to make a decision that everything is going to work out well. And so I finally made the decision that my body knows how to do this. I'm in the best health that I've been in probably the last 10 years, and that my body is going to do exactly what it needs to do. And as a matter of fact, I'm not going to be in a lot of pain, and that it's going to be a healing and a process that goes as good as it possibly could, because I trust that God has that for me. And you know what? Here's the thing, is that I don't have to be right. I'm not worried about whether or not I'm going to be right. I trust that is like, that belief is what's going to put me in the best place to go through this.
Yeah.
And that nothing else matters. And so if Metallica didn't just run through your head, then there's
I totally
something wrong with you.
But not just Metallica, but the Chris Stapleton cover that he just put out was awesome.
Anyway.
And Jungle Cruise.
Yeah, Jungle Cruise.
Because
totally.
that was an awesome cover as well. I think, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Like, if there's complications, if anything else happens, then we will cross that bridge when we get there, and
There's
will
no point.
deal with it when it comes. And guess what? We will deal with it from a better place
Heck yeah.
than what we would if we went into it filled with fear.
Yeah. Wow.
So
Get them.
that's my thought for today.
But as men, because we are external on the pregnancy, I believe that's why it's so pivotal to be emotionally connected with your wife, to walk through what we believe is the same loss. Although we don't physically go through the birth or any of that, there's the aspect of the physical intimacy that you can have, as well as the mental. And then, of course, we can't leave out the spiritual. That's all tied together, because the scripture is very clear that two become one. And I believe we've talked about this, but as the more you get married, the more one you become. When you're thinking one, it's just thinking the physical aspect. And after 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, the mental connection starts to take place. And that's when it starts to get really fun. We read or heard something that it takes about 16 years for you mentally to become one, based on the science of neurological connection in the way the brain thinks and operates. And so we are celebrating our 17th anniversary in a few months. And so
I think that was sacred marriage, maybe.
possibly. But so I'm excited to see what growth happens in the next 2 years.
I already told you that I am not interested in taking our marriage from a 9 to a 10.
I thought you were going to say you're not interested in taking our marriage from a 9 to a 7 or a 6 or whatever.
No. So what I'm referring to is the fact that when we lost Xander, I believe that took our marriage from an 8 up to a 9, and I told him that I did not want to be part of whatever tragedy was necessary to take us from a 9 to a 10. I'm happy here.
Again, thank you for all of you who have been here and walking with us over the last few weeks. We hope and pray that our sharing this with you is encouraging in some way. And even if it's, I don't know, to share that there's hope inside of tragedy, great. If it's encouraging you to focus on your marriage, great. Whatever.
Sharing that God is good all the time.
All the time. So.
Wholeheartedly. I kind of said that kind of like solemnly, but I mean that wholeheartedly.
Awesome. Well, we'll be back with more fun and adventure and all sorts of stuff. Spring is coming.
Yes, it is.
I'm excited for spring.
You know what spring means?
Bees?
Babies.
Babies. I thought it was a good close. Bye.